Hello and welcome my YouTube. Today I am here with highly esteemed wizard Lee W. Johnson that's here to talk about his channel, his occult journey, the books that he's written. It's a very good YouTube channel. You all should seek it out if you're into occult, and we are very pleased to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's good to be here. Hello, everybody.
Just for the people that don't know you, a couple of introductory questions. What do you practice?
That's a difficult one. People ask me this, and I just say my own path. It's been a conglomeration of different things over the past 30 years, which have just become, a melding together of things here and there. I think the main influences would be traditional witchcraft, demonology, core shamanism, Kabbalah is a big influence, practical Kabbalah, and Toltec warrior path and chaos magic. If you put it all together, you'd probably just say chaos magic. So yeah.
Now, you did give me your books to read, and I did notice, as they're obviously written over like a decade, it's a long period of time. Do you think your practice changed over time? Because in reality of things, it felt more like it was maybe Wicca and traditional witchcraft inspired, and then your later books lean more heavily into Kabbalah.
Yeah, I think anybody's path develops over time. The first book I wrote was Reality of Things, and that was very much in that period. Actually, when I wrote that, I had just met Yakuba Swat. He became my practical Kabbalah teacher, mentor, friend. So there was starting to get some influence from the Kabbalistic side there, and then the Black Crow obviously extended from that, so it got a bit more Kabbalistic. I think at that stage it was very much traditional witchcraft. I did start out sort of neo-pagan, neo-Wicca, the book-read Wiccan-esque type thing that most people do, and so I did want to keep that in there because it was an early influence. But yeah, no, it's definitely, I think since I wrote the books, things have developed so much more. And I did actually go over all of the books about 2 years ago, and just went through them just to check everything was still okay. Found a ton of spelling errors and things like that. But I must say, what I believed in then, I kind of still believe in now. It's just that it's developed a lot further than what it was then. So it's quite interesting.
So your background is still useful to you. If there was something to change in your path, you just wouldn't change it.
Definitely not. No. I mean, I wouldn't be here now if I changed anything. So, maybe get more knowledge, push more knowledge in there, but...
In which direction in particular?
I don't know, actually. I mean, if we speak about demonology specifically, in the past, before S. Connolly came along, she published her first book, I think, like 15 years ago. I don't think anybody had actually heard or used the term demonology. And back then, it was very much focused on the old grimoires. The Lesser Key of Solomon, the Goetia, the Grimorium Varium, etc., etc., etc. And those tend to be very much from the perspective of control, bind, treat badly. Treating these spirits badly and trying to force them into action. And then demonology came along, and it kind of opened up avenues where we respect the demons. So back then, it was a case of trying to find a way to work with these spirits, these ancient old gods, in a respectful manner, as opposed to what was actually written and pursued in those books. And there were people such as Aaron Leach, who did kind of bring that across by creating things like spirit boxes and praying to these spirits as they were old gods. But it was very far and few between. So when I started working with the grimoires and the demons, I didn't enjoy this whole approach of forcing them into a triangle and trying to force them to do things for me. I felt like this was a bit, a bit egotistical. So, I was trying to find a way to actually incorporate that and be respectful. And then demonology opened up, and I think everybody got a better view of things then. So again, it develops.
Did you actually go through like a full Solomonic ritual?
Yes, I tried. Let's put it this way, I tried.
How accurately? Because they ask for quite a few things.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't say it was perfectly in line with exactly what the book says, but bringing all in the various aspects like the symbolism, the circle, the shield on the chest, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I was trying to get as close as I could, but there's a lot of
gold
things.
Rings?
No, I can't afford gold rings, so you do the best you can in the circumstances you have. No.
The closest I've ever gotten to like a ceremonial thing was Gallery of Magic's rituals, which are definitely simplified considering the whole Solomonic spiel.
Yeah, they're very much simplified, and I think that's an important aspect as well. I did the Abramelin operation, and there's no way I can cancel my life out for 6 or 18 months, depending on which version you're following, and build a house or a hut which has a east-facing window and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's no way I can do that. So you kind of do the best you can with the things you have. And I think in those old texts, a lot of blinds. It's kind of trying to mislead people, and only the people who can see through the blinds will actually get to the goal. So there's a lot to kind of figure out what's what.
So if someone wanted to do like an old ritual, but they couldn't perfectly because circumstances would not allow, would you still encourage them to do it for the experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, as I said, get as close as you can to with what you've got available. And consider the blinds that are in there. There's a lot of reference to like herbs having strange names and things like that, like adder's tongue and what have you. And you've got to really study and try and figure out what's what first, and then go ahead and do it. Do whatever you can. Experience it.
Now, you are a content creator, so what made you decide to open a YouTube channel when you were first opening it?
I actually tried 3 or 4 times before and didn't get very far. But the last time I actually started, and now it's continued over the past 3 years, the main goal was just to do a mind dump. I just wanted to. It's why I wrote the first book, is to just get all this shit out of my head. Sorry, I hope I can swear on your channel. Just to get all this stuff out of my head, and onto something material and tangible. And that's why I started the YouTube channel, just to get all this crap out. Originally, it was supposed to be focused on business and entrepreneurship and creating WordPress sites. That was the original intention, the goal. And then the audience changed that. I just followed the audience and what they wanted. So, yeah.
I don't suppose there's any business advice still left on your channel.
If you check right in the beginning, there's probably some there. Yeah. I was trying to create this whole spiritual or magical entrepreneur type of feel or vibe to it. So yeah, it didn't work out that way.
Here's information on the spirits. Here's how you create a WordPress site. It's kind of like my channel going, here's some occult stuff, also gaming on the side. Now, what should people expect to find on your channel if they want to like come to you and hear information that you do deliver? What kind of topics do you normally cover?
Anything to do with magic, mysticism, witchcraft, demons, the occult. Let's just put it in a broad term, the occult. I think a lot of people come to my channel looking for information about demons and left-hand path and things like that. And I actually, it's coming out this coming Monday. I did a video about left-hand path versus right-hand path. And the first thing I say is, sorry, folks, I'm not a left-hand pather, but I'm also not a right-hand path.
I find that a lot of people fall into middle, and that there's a lot of taking sides, but most occult practitioners will not be strictly one or the other.
No. I think it mostly comes from my traditional witchcraft background, and we talk about the crooked path. And the crooked path winds. It goes here and there and everywhere. It has a lot of different experiences, and it's on all sides. It's not trying to isolate one side and create a war against the other side.
Is there anything specifically occult that you would not cover? Because you seem to be covering a wide range of topics.
Again, coming back to what's coming out on Monday, probably the clipotic tree, the tree of death. I don't believe it's really what people are thinking it is. The klipa are literally husks or shells, and if you equate that with mysticism, that's Maya, it's the illusion. This is Klippa, all of this. My phone is the Klippa. It's the illusion, and we have to try and get beneath the skin, into the underworld. And that's where you find the juicy fruit. But if you're going to stay on the shell, you're going to stay in the illusion. So that's specifically something I would not, follow, talk about, advise on my channel itself.
If someone was to approach your books, they go to your site, they see that you have 5 books, in what order should people read them?
The reality of things first, because that was kind of I wrote that as I said, like a mind dump. And it was also aimed at people beginning. And so it has some Wicca, it has some witchcraft, it has some ceremonial magic, it has some chaos magic. Kind of mixed in together. So whatever you feel most attracted to is kind of like where you should, follow that path until the path changes. But it gives you kind of an idea. And then it's the Black Crow that was written afterwards. The Black Crow, what I've done, I kind of extended. I started rewriting the Black Crow. I started trying to expand on what was written in there, because there's a lot more I've learned over the years that I can add to it. So I started rewriting that, and it became a 400, 500 page book, and I still haven't finished. So what I decided to do was to keep it as it was, and then create like expansion series. So meditation and breathwork became a smaller book, but it's taken those chapters out of the Black Crow and expanded on it. And then I've done one for banishing rites. I'm going to do one for sigils. There'll probably be a couple others, and then completely on its own is elementals and servitors. Yeah.
Now, in The Reality of Things, your first book, you combine quite a few different practices and points of view from different cultures, which made me think, is it in your view that every culture has a tiny bit of piece of truth with some falsehoods added to it, or do you believe that we're all just looking at the same thing from different perspectives?
Both. I think everybody kind of has a piece of the puzzle, but at the same time, what you usually find is people will be talking about concepts, and they're using different terminology. And then they're all arguing about it. I'm right. But they're all talking about the same thing. They're just using different words to try and explain it. And that comes into the whole thing. But definitely everybody has like pieces of the puzzle. And sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're slightly different, so they all fit together. And that's how everything comes together, really.
So you find exploration of different cultures to be a fruitful endeavor if someone wants to understand the reality of things better.
Yes, absolutely. Obviously, saying that, we've got to bear in mind that we need to be very respectful of all the different cultures. We have cultural appropriation and things like that. And we have to be careful, especially if you go down closed practices, or cultures which are in the minority or have been separated and things like that. We've got to be very respectful of the cultures we have a look at.
So if they don't want you there, effectively, do not touch.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I just wanted to add to that. It does kind of sometimes get a little bit difficult because you do come across closed practices and they say, no, we're not allowing you in. That's fine. I'm not going to go there. The problem comes in when one of the spirits from that culture start calling to you, and it's not delusional. It really is that spirit that's calling to you. Then it gets quite difficult how to try and figure out a way to overlap and try and integrate. Yeah.
I have heard a viewpoint towards that if that happens, you should close the doors to that spirit because it's not yours to touch. Or do you think that that's what should happen, or that there's a bit more nuance to it?
It is very difficult. I mean, I've heard that opinion of also. So the other opinion that I heard, apart from walk away, was that we have this whole cross-boundary thing now. We can travel everywhere. We have the internet, etc., etc. That the spirits from these closed practices are actually reaching out to people outside those cultures in order to try and integrate everybody, because we are all integrated throughout the internet now. So it gets very difficult to try and figure out which direction to take this, because you want to be respectful on one hand, but on the other hand, you've got this spirit that's knocking on your door and saying, open the freaking door for me, and won't give up. So, what do you do? Yeah.
There's one thing that was quite interesting to read your viewpoint on in the reality of things, which was the near-death experiences. I have legitimately not heard somebody describe the near-death experience as losing a part of your soul. I thought it might be interesting if you could expand on your own and introduce this concept to people watching right now.
All right. So this happened to me 23 years ago. The experience itself, I kind of entered a void space. I became nothing. You kind of enter that, what we might call samadhi from a Hindu perspective, where you become nothing. You unite with divinity, etc., etc., etc. And I had to try to sort of find my way back to this reality. But in terms of losing part of your soul, if we consider this from the perspective of soul loss, susto, when somebody goes through a traumatic experience, they lose a part of their soul. And that's usually seen as that soul part goes into the underworld and it hides there. And it takes that trauma with them so that we can mentally and emotionally cope with the trauma itself. It's very difficult to go through that process, but without that happening, we would be a complete zero. We wouldn't know what's going on in life. And then the process is somebody, a shaman, etc., goes and finds the lost soul part and brings it back, all right, after it's healed. So what happens with a shamanic death? There's various shamanic deaths. This is specifically the actual physical death. What happens with the shamanic death is that the same thing happens. You go through the trauma, But what happens in the normal trauma, normal trauma is probably a very bad term to use, but I think you know what I mean. In a trauma where somebody's had an accident, they're not going through a shamanic death, that lost soul part leaves a hole, and that hole gets filled with illness, disease, etc., etc. With the shamanic death, the same thing happens. You go through the trauma, piece of your soul gets taken out, and there's a hole. And that hole gets filled with power. And it's the same process. The hole just gets filled with something different, which is what equates it with being a shamanic death. And I've spoken to many people over the years who, said the same thing. I actually spoke to one lady who kept getting struck by lightning. She'd been struck by lightning like 10 times in her life, and she was still alive.
At that point, just don't go outside when it's raining.
Yeah, if your hair starts to rise, just run.
It's because I probably have experienced the death myself, but you describe it in so much terms and turmoil and make it spiritual. Well, for me, I was a kid getting surgery for about 10 hours. So from my perspective, nothing happened. I was put to sleep. I woke up and everybody was very worried if my brain was still intact, asking me logical questions. And I kind of lost part of my memories and my ability to create memories the way that I did before. But it wasn't that I was in a void, and it wasn't that I was fighting for me or something. At one moment, I was on the start of the operating table when they just transfer you, and on the other moment, I was in intense scare. There wasn't that part that I would remember, even though I probably did die. So that's quite interesting because it's a very different experience, I would say.
Well, I mean, not every experience is going to be the same. Somebody can go through exactly the same thing and it won't be a shamanic death. But there's something that you kind of know, you're told, you're given, which kind of defines it as being something different. At the same time, somebody could experience walking through a shop and another person does exactly the same thing. The experience is completely and utterly different. So not all experiences are the same. So some people may have a death, a physical death. You were dead for X amount of time, etc. However we term that, near-death experience, etc. But the experience is going to be completely different. And also, if you consider this from different religions and different cultures, somebody in one religion is going to have a very different experience to somebody in a different religion, because usually it's based on the experience you're expecting. Mine was, I just kind of entered this nothingness and I saw the goddess there and she was crying because she couldn't help me because I had to get through this myself. And I saw an old Indian guy who just sat there smiling. I'm like, who the hell are you? So, I think that was my experience, and it, as I said, very different for everybody. Well, that's kind of the other question I always ask myself. I mean, did I actually come back? I don't know. Maybe this is a completely different reality. I'm in a parallel universe. I don't know. I really don't know.
One parallel universe just fell off. You just transfer to the next one.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can only answer these questions as best as we can, which is why we do what we do. I mean, I think this is the main reason why we venture down these paths and study the occult and things, is to try and find the answers, not just to what's happening to us personally, but what's happening to the entire cosmos. What the truth is. I mean, there's no absolute truth either, so we learn that as we go.
Now, in your Black Crow, a lot of that book focus on meditation and breath work, from what I saw. And you stress the importance of meditation and magical workings, but of course, meditation comes to us from the East, and in a more traditional witchcraft way in Western society, you probably wouldn't encounter meditation the way that we know it today. So my question is, did you notice in other cultures the equivalent of our meditation, just perhaps not called meditation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if you go into northern traditions, things like utiseta, which is sitting out, I mean, that's a practice that's very similar to, I've forgotten the terminology now, but basically it's sitting out in nature in a wild space. And quite often you put a blanket over your head and you just sit and you go silent, you go quiet, and you wait for the spirits to come and talk to you. But it's very similar to the practice of meditation. You are sitting in silence, trying to still the mind. I think there's a lot of practices throughout all cultures where the purpose to the whole thing is to try and quiet the mind, try and bring yourself into one-pointed focus, so that you can focus on what you're doing. I do think that a long time ago that was a lot easier to do than it is now. We have way too much stimulus now. Just too much going into our heads, social media, news, everything from our daily lives, and it just creates this noise. And that, on the one hand, is why I think meditation is really, really important for everybody now, is to try and quieten that down a bit, get some perspective. And there's definitely evidence of it in all cultures, I think.
I mean, that's why some people take up knitting. They suddenly find the time to think, and the world quietens down.
Yeah, and I think, we've been speaking about this a lot lately. When it comes to meditation, when we think of meditation, everybody thinks immediately of, sit down and be quiet, do not move, breathe in a certain way, and that's quite often what I teach. But at the same time, meditation is supposed to be about silencing the mind and bringing yourself into one point of focus. And sometimes we call that hyperfocus. That can happen a lot of different ways. Peeling the potatoes, washing the dishes, doing a coloring book, whatever it is, as long as it gets you into that state that you need to be in, that's meditation. I mean, obviously, if we go into the Eastern practices and the 8 limbs of yoga and things like that, and we then talk about meditation as being something a lot deeper, the term meditation itself. But in Western magical traditions, meditation is that, just silencing, calming, one-pointed focus type of thing, which leads to trance.
You have a very important chapter on visualization. So many people these days diagnose themselves with aphantasia, which is being unable to see anything in your mind's eye, being unable to imagine, visualize. Do you think it is mostly lack of that visualization training, and a lot of more people would be able to if they tried?
I think it depends on the level of that aphantasia. I mean, when I wrote the book, I haven't even heard that word before. There's a lot of things I've learned over the past couple of years, actually. Not just you can't visualize, but also no internal dialogue. It just blew my mind.
Yeah, that was a new one for me too.
Yeah, and not being able to create habit, and all of these things, which completely changed my view of how I teach meditation itself. Because if you can't create habit, you've got to try and remind yourself every day to do it. I can't just tell people, just do it at the same time every day, because not everybody can create habit. So it's amazing, really. But yeah, with visualization, I think it depends on the level. If somebody has complete aphantasia, they won't be able to train their mind to visualize. But at the same time, visualization isn't all about the sight or seeing with your eyes, if we put it that way. When we talk about the psychic senses, the sight, or seeing with a capital S, is about all of the senses. It's not just about the eyes or the psychic eyes, if you want to put it that way. So with visualization, it's not always just about seeing an object. It's about feeling it, about smelling it, about tasting it. So if you can use your other senses to do the visualization, it's actually a bad word to use as visualization, because visual speaks about the eyes, but it's about all the senses. So, if you can do that, then you can progress quite nicely. Yeah.
If you were writing the book anew right now, what would you include for the people that can't visualize?
Focus on the senses that you do have, the psychic senses, the internal senses. So if you can sit down and you can imagine a smell, think of roses. If you can actually smell that, or think of eating an orange, if you can taste that, if your taste buds kind of cling to the back of your mouth, and you get that tangy type of feeling in your mouth and whatnot, then you can focus on those senses themselves. And just focusing on one sense, one psychic sense, will start to enhance all of the others over time. You may stay without visual integration, but as long as you've got all the senses. I know people who do journey work and they don't see anything, but they can still do the journey work. They can still venture through these spaces, because it's like when you read a book. What happens when you read a book, when you read a fiction book? I visualize things. I see the images. I act them out in my mind's eye. But other people may not do that. They may experience it in a different way. So how you experience a fiction book is probably how you're going to experience things like visualization or journeying, or all of that astral type of work. Yeah, my hands are going wild today.
So you would recommend people to sit down with a fiction book and pay attention to what kind of experience they're having?
Yeah, absolutely. That experience is probably what you're going to take through to your spiritual astral work.
Now, you wrote a very interesting little working to invite one's own guardian. Now, there are a lot of different ways that people call guardian spirits, including guardian angels. Some people go with, I feel like I have a guardian demon. What exactly would you describe that guardian as being? Conceptualize it. That one particularly, that was where you visualize the four pillars, white and black, and yeah, that was actually from an old book I read, slightly adapted. It was a Druid book, actually, but I found it very, very useful for. They called it a ward. It's slightly different to what a ward actually is, but this was a guardian spirit, as in it guards you. There's various spirits we can talk about. We can talk about familiars who are there to help you with your magic, but at the same time that crosses over to being the fetch. And the fetch, we can split. Robin Artisan kind of split it. We can split it into the fetch beast and the fetch mate. And the fetch beast is the beast that we ride into the underworld when we go to the witches' sabbat and things like that. So it acts as guardian and protector. But that's still not the same as what I was talking about there. We talk about the guardian angel, which is the higher self, which is completely different, absolutely completely different. So yeah, we've got all these guardian spirits, but this specific one was very much. I think I would actually probably place it very much in the area of familiar, where it is guarding you from outside influences, rather than that fetch beast which is guarding you or protecting you as you're riding into the underworld, or things like that. That's very much what it feels like anyway. Yeah. Now,
the Holy Guardian Angel, very different.
how would you define a familiar? Because a lot of different people have a lot of different views on what a familiar is.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ways we can define it as well. And there's a lot of different workings you can do to find your familiar or get your familiar. In some cases, it is purely a spirit from the other worlds, from the underworld, that you call to you to help you. And in some cases, that spirit can embody a pet. I know everybody carries on about my cat is my familiar. Probably not. But it is possible that that spirit can embody a pet. And there are various workings you go through, and you feed the pet blood, your own blood, and things like that. So there's a lot of old witchcraft tales and things that you can have a look at in relation to that. But there's also the acts of creating a familiar, which is very much a servitor. And in that case, what you usually do, you do it every year. So that familiar is on your life for a year, and then you create the new one, traditionally. Then, what have I done? I've done the spirit that comes, that can embody the animal, and the spirit that you create. That's really kind of it, yeah.
Moving on to the spirits that you can create in your book on elementals and servitors. You open the book with stating that one should be very respectful to their creation and to treat it with respect, to not just be mean to it, not see it as, I don't know, an automaton that absolutely has to always obey you no matter what. Do you have any lived experience or heard any tales where a person may have not done that, and what occurred as a result?
I can't really think of anything offhand. I actually think when I wrote the book, I think that was also about 10 years ago or something like that, a decade ago. But around that time, I'm probably coming out of that actually. But I remember a lot of people were carrying on about their servitors being their slaves and things like this. And people were starting to talk about how it was like internal enslavement, which is a very, very respectful thing. It's a very bad term, but it's part of the BDSM aspects. And, they were kind of relating that to how you treat your servitor. You should have respect for it. It is your child. It is your creation. But, still, even now, a lot of people even treat their own children badly. They disrespect them because they're just this thing that they created. I mean, I don't understand that myself. It doesn't equate with me. But I think over the years, people have started coming out of that kind of mindset, and have become a lot more respectful of their own creations, as they should be, especially in magic. I can't think of anything offhand where people have had bad experiences. Yeah.
It's just that it's best to go in with the thought of respect rather than the opposite.
Well, it kind of speaks to, if you create a servitor and you push it around, you order it around, you put it in a cage, how do you treat your own children? This is really, it's coming from you. It's probably more intimate than your own children, because it's your energy, it's your life force that you're pumping into this creation, this spiritual creation, and it really is your child. So if you're disrespecting and treating that child badly, how do you treat your physical children? So I don't know. People would treat it badly.
You spoke about a very interesting thing in your book, that time is not necessarily linear. And a lot of people do notice this, that when they start doing workings, that sometimes what they need manifests before they finish the working. And in your own written opinion in the book, you should still finish going through the working, even if the result has started to manifest itself. I have heard almost the opposite opinion of, well, if it started to manifest, it means that some part of you somewhere has finished the working. Therefore, you need not bother. What do you think about such line of thought?
Well, I suppose it's my own belief, really. I mean, if you think about time being linear and lateral, everything is, in a lateral sense, is happening at the same moment. So if you are creating a servitor and you go through a whole process, which can take 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is, so you design it and then you kind of start to think about it and what it's going to do, and et cetera, and you go through the gestation period and the creation, blah, blah, blah. And you're in this stage where you're still designing it, you're still trying to figure out what it's going to do, and all of a sudden the result comes. If you think of it in terms of lateral time, yes, it's all happening in the same moment. So you've already created the servitor and it's already done its work and all the results have come. So we, however, function in linear time. It's how we are. This recording is now 43 minutes long. But at the same time, we've already finished this interview and this chat. So, got to think linear and lateral, but we function in linear time. So in order for that result to come, we still need to complete the work. So if we break it off and don't complete the work, we kind of screw things up on some timeline somewhere, some parallel dimension somewhere. So I believe that we have to complete the work, because we have completed the work, but we have to physically do it as well, not just astrally, because in order for something to come in from the astral into the physical and manifest into the physical, you've got to tie in the physical and the astral. And that's why both are very important. It's all very important. We can't just ignore the physical for the spiritual or the spiritual for the physical. It's all part of who we are. Yeah.
Considering that you wrote Chaos Magic Approach in your book, and you do practice it to some extent, at what point do you think a person should employ a sigil over a servitor or a servitor over a sigil?
Sigils, I think, are very short term. They can be. They usually or created for short-term projects. Servitors are usually more long-term, maybe a year, maybe a lifetime. At the same time, we can create sigils which we keep around for a long period of time. And I actually do believe that if you do that, you actually do create a thought form. So you do create a servitor, even though if you're not, consciously doing the magic to create a servitor, having a sigil around and working with a sigil for a long period of time, you start to create a thought form. And I think a lot of magic is actually creating thought forms and sending those thought forms out, because we have to have thought in order to have a desire and have emotions. So our thought goes into the magic, creates a thought form gets sent out. So we're creating servitors more often than we know. So
does that include other magical tools, such as people that use rocks in their practice, or anathame, or cards? Do you think they too imbue that item with their energy and a purpose over time until it becomes a thought form just through usage?
Yeah, absolutely. And apart from your own thought form, sometimes you can get various nature spirits that come along and attach themselves, especially if you're creating a wand or a staff or a stang or something like that, and you do it in a manner in which you actually ask the dryad of the tree or the grove or the forest to put some of its energy into that piece of wood. You're working with a nature spirit, but with tools and things that you're working with over a long period of time, it's specifically for a purpose. And every time you pick it up, you think of that thing, that purpose. You're starting to create a thought form. It's an energy flow that starts to take place.
In your part in the book where you explain breathing in the elements, you stated that it's best to avoid to breathe them into your heart or head. but you never quite elaborate why. So I'm asking you why here.
Actually, you say that, I don't remember. I'll have to go over that again.
Perhaps that's another book topic for.
Yep, I'll have to go over that and try and remember why I said that. Why would you not? No, I'd be guessing if I tried to think about it now. Yeah, I'll definitely have to try and remember why I said that.
It's because I read them recently, so they're fresh in my mind, and you wrote them long time ago. You openly express beliefs that will be unusual to other people in your book. We already talked about the belief of losing a part of one's soul, or the fact that Columbus's ships may have not been visible to the natives until somebody got the idea of what a ship is. What do you think would be the most unusual belief, unheard of belief to the audience that you're speaking to right now that you hold? Because it's always interesting to hear about the beliefs of other people, of course.
Most unusual belief. Goodness. That's getting harder nowadays because so many people are believing in so many different things. I think one of the most abstract beliefs that I have, which hasn't made it to a lot of people, is the idea of the cosmic soup, the afterlife. We often speak about death and the afterlife as being, especially in terms of reincarnation, you have a pure soul, and when we die, we go through the afterlife, and then we get reincarnated. But it's this one pure soul that keeps going through all these lifetimes. The idea of the cosmic soup is very different. I'm animistic, so everything has a spirit: rocks, plants, birds, fish, animals, everything. So when everything dies, it gets put into the cosmic soup, and the cosmic soup gets mixed up and swirled around, and then at some stage a little bit gets plucked out of it and put into a body, whether that's a person, tree, a rock, whatever. But that's a mixture of a lot of different souls that gets taken out, which is why so many people are the reincarnation of Cleopatra. I kind of extend that a bit further. I believe that we have a tribe, and it may consist of thousands of people. And each lifetime we meet our tribe. So it's those people who we meet and we're instantly familiar with. And those relationships change each time. And then we all die and we get put back into this cosmic soup. We all get mixed up and we get taken out and all go through the next life. But we keep meeting up our tribe. Again, the relationships have changed, but that familiarity with that person, that instant familiarity, is because it's not just because we knew them in a past life, it's because we've been part of their soul and they've been part of our soul. So, I think that's probably the most abstract thing I believe that hasn't kind of made it into mainstream.
I do believe that it's quite useful for people to hear it because it might help them to reconceptualize their own ideas and get them thinking. It's always good to have another possible viewpoint of what it may be.
Yeah, it's why I had you on my channel as well, is because I want people to experience as many different viewpoints and worldviews as they possibly can in order to find their own, because everybody's worldview is going to be different. Even if you're following the same tradition, your worldview is going to be different somewhere. And this is what makes everybody so interesting. We're all different.
Now, you have a YouTube channel, you have lessons, your site even had blog posts, but I think the last one was in like May 2023. So it's been a while. Are you planning on writing more books?
I am. I've actually I wanted to do, because I did the Astral Temple course, I want to write a book about that and expand a bit further on the course itself. I still need to do the Sigil Magic book. I'm actually debating still whether to do that, because there's some fantastic books out there already. All I'll really be doing is regurgitating, but I do want to bring sound sigils into it. I am also creating the Temple of the Horned Serpent, which is very much going to be my kind of life end project. It's all my beliefs and all my own practices put into a degree system, starting with your foundation and building a good house on top of that. And so that's going to be kind of the training material in there is going to be a book. Whether that will be released publicly, I don't know, because it comes with a lot of video demonstrations and things like that, so it gets difficult in book format. I did start writing a fiction book, but I got halfway through and kind of abandoned that, so I must try and pick that up at some stage. Yeah,
Fiction is very challenging.
Always wanted, since I was like a tiny little boy, I've always wanted to write a fiction book. I did write one when I was about 5 or 6 years old. It was about Tom and Jerry. So
I do understand that, because a lot of people don't realize how hard it is to write someone into a book that's not you, but still has a believable viewpoint and their own life. It's theater. It's hard to do. It's quite the skill. So if you ever finish that, I'm pretty sure people will definitely be interested in that. What is next for your YouTube channel?
I'm just going to carry on as it is now. I've introduced a couple of things over the past month, so I'm going to carry on doing my Monday musings, which have now also incorporated the Path series. So I'm examining a path each month. Doing a book review each month, hopefully doing chats and interviews with people, and then things about my own opinions and rubbish I'm hearing on the internet and in social media. And then Wednesdays is the Ask Lee slot. So if I continue to get questions from people, I'll continue with that slot. Just answer. Although I need to change that to Ask Uncle Lee, because people are starting to call me Uncle Lee now. And Demon of the Week is on Saturday. There's lots and lots of demons to cover, so I'm just going to carry on doing that. And then once a month I do the Covenstead, which is just a no topic. It's just a get together, chat about what you want to chat about, ask any questions you want to ask. That's usually for an hour. It's a live. And then the other live is third Sunday of the month is a healing half hour called The Cauldron. There you go. So I'm just going to carry on doing that.
You have a lot of things that you do for your channel. That's quite the list.
I know. It's I actually say to people, over the years, some people have asked me how to start a YouTube channel, and the only thing I tell them is, don't do it for anybody else but yourself. If you're not enjoying what you're doing, you're not going to carry on doing it. Because if you're expecting to see thousands and thousands of subscribers in the first month, it's not going to happen. And then you're going to get disillusioned and you're going to stop. So I think that's YouTube has become. I don't like any other social media. I keep every now and again. I keep trying Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. Every now and again I try them and I'm like, boring. I'll just stick with YouTube. So it's my love.
And the final question of this chat/interview is, do you know where you want to take your spirituality next? Is there anything that you have planned to investigate, to incorporate another system? Anything that you're looking forward to?
I don't know about another system. I do kind of keep cycling back to different systems, especially Toltec Warrior Path. once a year for about 2 or 3 months, I get focused on Toltec warrior path. But new things, I'm not really sure. I think at this point, I'm trying to further develop practices that I battle with. Even after 30 years, there's certain practices I battle with. Astral projection, never been able to get that right. Every now and again, I get it. Haven't you? And I've heard people say you can't be a witch if you can't astral project. Rubbish. But every now and again, I kind of get it right. And I remember flying down the passage in my house into my bedroom and looking at myself. And every now and again, I know I'm flying. I become lucid in my dreams, but it's not a controlled thing. I'm trying to get to that point where it's controlled. It's just one of those things that have eluded me over the years that I just cannot get right.
The only times I ever managed it was when I was completely not trying to do it. And it was such random things. Like suddenly you're meditating. At one point I was just looking at red brick buildings, probably somewhere in England, the grey sky. And I was like, what? And then I came back here. And I was like, well, that was random.
No, I've had those experiences, especially during meditation. And the funniest one, I don't know if you found this. It's around about the 18-minute mark when you're in meditation, you're going to a deep trance. It's around about the 18-minute mark, something happens, and quite often it's kind of this flash of light. But every now and again, I'm somewhere else. And the funniest one was I was sitting on the bank of a river. It was summer, bright day, and this black guy came up to me and he kind of looked at me and he said, "You're not supposed to be here. Go away." Completely and utterly random. It was crazy.
Whoops, I wasn't trying to be here. Anyways, I will leave the links to your books and to your website and to your YouTube in the description down below. But is there anything else that you would like to say to the audience as viewed so far? Anything that you want to promote, or just a word of wisdom?
A word of wisdom. Stop studying so much, which is really bad advice. You have to study. You really do. You have to study. But what I find is people just carry on studying and studying and studying and studying. And they're saying, I don't think I'm ready for this yet. I don't think I can do it yet. Just do it. Put down the book. Just go ahead and do it and experience it, because most of what we're doing, most of what is the learning process is the doing part. So even if you don't feel you're ready yet, just do it and see what happens. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to make loads and loads and loads and loads of mistakes. And that's how we learn. And if you do make mistakes and you're not sure what's going on and you have these experiences which are totally wild and you think you're going completely insane, find a good community. And I don't mean a Facebook group that has thousands and thousands of people. I mean a community of people you can trust and people who have experienced things. Community is extremely important. And it's a community you need that is going through the same things you are. Funny thing I read in a book a while back. It was a book about shamanism. It was interviewing different shamans from all different cultures. And the one guy was a clinical psychologist as well as being a shaman. And he said, what's interesting is a lot of people who come to the institutions or hearing voices and things like that and get institutionalized are actually shamans, about 95% of them. The problem is that they're in communities like Christian communities that don't accept this. That's not part of what you should be doing. So when you start hearing voices, even the voice of Jesus, you're not allowed to hear the voice of Jesus because, only prophets do that. Not thinking that person could be a prophet, just throw them in an institution. So he's actually said about 95% of people who are institutionalized are shamans, but they're just in the wrong community. So it's very important to find your own community, a good community of people you trust. And then if you have these weird experiences, you can go to them and say, what's going on? and somebody in that community may have experienced it, or they may know somebody who has experienced it. So you can get some good guidance. As long as not everybody's leading everybody down the same delusional path, you're okay. You know.
It is quite also important to have communities that can ground you when you start to slightly run away with your experiences. Somebody that can just grab your hand and go, okay, but here's the ground, and here's the life that we're leading day to day, and don't forget that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Stay grounded, stay in your place. Just know that weird things can happen.
Well, that's definitely some wise words to live by. And thank you for coming over and giving such a long and insightful interview. I do hope that people stick around and that they have actually watched till the end, because I do believe that it is quite important information. I'm going to leave all the links, and this is goodbye to YouTube. So see you in the other videos, YouTube. And if you want to see wonderful Lee W. Johnson, make sure to check out his channel.
Thank you very much. And bye, everybody. Thanks for watching.